Our story begins not in Judea, but in the sprawling, conquered lands of a fading empire, a world reshaped by the whirlwind ambition of one man. It happened after that Alexander, son of Philip the Macedonian, who came out of the land of Chetim, had smitten Darius, king of the Persians and Medes, that he reigned in his stead, the first over Greece. This was Alexander the Great, a name that echoed across continents, a force of nature, who made many wars and won many strongholds, and slew the kings of the earth, and went through to the ends of the earth, and took spoils of many nations. The known world fell quiet before him, subdued by the sheer force of his will, whereupon he was exalted, and his heart was lifted up, and he gathered a mighty strong host, and ruled over countries and nations and kings, who became tributaries unto him. But empires built by one man often fracture when that man falls, and after these things he fell sick, and perceived that he should die. Wherefore he called his servants, such as were honourable, and had been brought up with him from his youth, and parted his kingdom among them while he was yet alive. So Alexander reigned 12 years, and then died, and his servants bore rule, every one in his place. And after his death they all put crowns upon themselves. So did their sons after them many years. From the unified empire of Alexander sprang the rival Hellenistic kingdoms, the Seleucids in Syria and the Ptolemies in Egypt, between whom the small, mountainous land of Judea was caught like a seed between two grinding stones. For a time the Ptolemies held sway, and life for the Jewish people continued, but then the balance of power shifted, and the Seleucid king, Antiochus the Great, wrested control of Judea, a change that at first seemed merely political, but would soon become existential. For decades, a cultural Cold War simmered beneath the surface of Judean society. The Hellenistic way of life, with its gymnasiums, its philosophy, its art, and its pantheon of gods, was seductive to many, particularly the urban elite in Jerusalem. It represented modernity, sophistication, and connection to the wider, powerful Greek world, and evils were multiplied in the earth from this tension. And out of the decaying legacy of Alexander's successors came a wicked root, Antiochus, surnamed Epiphanes, son of Antiochus the king, who had been a hostage at Rome. This man, Antiochus IV Epiphanes, whose name meant God manifest, was a complex and volatile figure, desperate to consolidate his fragile kingdom and assert his divinity. He reigned in the 137th year of the kingdom of the Greeks. In those days there went out of Israel wicked men who persuaded many, saying, "Let us go and make a covenant with the heathen that are round about us, for since we departed from them, we have had much sorrow." This was the voice of assimilation, arguing that isolation had brought only hardship, that progress lay in joining the dominant culture. So this device pleased them well. Then certain of the people were so forward herein that they went to the king, who gave them license to do after the ordinances of the heathen. The cultural invasion began not with swords, but with symbols, whereupon they built a place of exercise at Jerusalem, according to the customs of the heathen. This gymnasium, a center for athletic and intellectual life, became the beachhead for Hellenism. There, young Jewish men, including priests, trained in the nude, a profound violation of Jewish modesty, and made themselves uncircumcised through a painful procedure to reverse the mark of God's covenant so they could blend in when competing. They forsook the Holy Covenant and joined themselves to the heathen and were sold to do mischief. The very identity of Israel was being surgically removed, not by force, but by choice. A willing surrender to what seemed like a brighter, more prosperous future. But King Antiochus had grander, more terrifying ambitions. Now, when the kingdom was established before Antiochus, he thought to reign over Egypt, that he might have the dominion of two realms. He embarked on a military campaign, entering into Egypt with a great multitude, with chariots and elephants and horsemen, and a great navy, and made war against Ptolemy, king of Egypt. The land also was moved for the inhabitants thereof, and all the house of Jacob was covered with confusion. Their world had been defiled, their God seemingly defeated. But Antiochus was not finished. His goal was the complete eradication of Jewish particularity. After 2 years fully expired, the king sent his chief collector of tribute unto the cities of Judah, who came unto Jerusalem with a great multitude, and spake peaceable words unto them, but all was deceit. For when they had given him credence, he fell suddenly upon the city, and smote it very sore, and destroyed much people of Israel. He set the city on fire, pulled down its houses and walls, took the women and children captive, and possessed the cattle. Then, in an act of supreme provocation, he built up the city of David, the ancient fortress of Zion, with a great and strong wall, and with mighty towers, and made it a stronghold for them. And they put therein a sinful nation, wicked men, and fortified themselves therein. They stored it also with armor and victuals. And when they had gathered together the spoils of Jerusalem, they laid them up there. This fortress, the Acra, became a dagger pointed at the heart of Jerusalem, a permanent garrison of Hellenized soldiers and apostate Jews, a place to lie in wait against the sanctuary and an evil adversary to Israel. Thus they shed innocent blood on every side of the sanctuary and defiled it. The inhabitants of Jerusalem fled. The city was made a habitation of strangers, and became strange to those that were born in her. Her own children left her. Her sanctuary was laid waste like a wilderness. Her feasts were turned into mourning, her Sabbaths into reproach, her honor into contempt. As had been her glory, so was her dishonor increased, and her excellency was turned into mourning. The final, unthinkable decree then came from the king's court. Moreover, King Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one people, and everyone should leave his laws. This was state-sponsored cultural genocide. All the heathen agreed according to the commandment of the king. Yea, many also of the Israelites consented to his religion, and sacrificed unto idols, and profaned the Sabbath. The king's letters were sent by messengers unto Jerusalem and the cities of Judah, commanding them to follow the strange laws of the land. They forbade burnt offerings and sacrifice and drink offerings in the temple. They commanded the profaning of the Sabbaths and festival days, and the polluting of the sanctuary and holy people. They set up altars and groves and chapels of idols, and sacrificed swine's flesh and unclean beasts. They were to leave their children uncircumcised, and make their souls abominable with all manner of uncleanness and profanation, to the end they might forget the law, and change all the ordinances. And whosoever would not do according to the commandment of the king, he said, he should die. Overseers were appointed to enforce this across Judah, commanding the cities to sacrifice city by city. Many gathered unto them, every one that forsook the law, and they committed evils in the land, and drove the Israelites into secret places, even wheresoever they could flee for succor. The ultimate desecration came on the 15th day of the month Caslu, in the 145th year. They set up the abomination of desolation upon the altar. This was likely a small altar to the Greek god Zeus Olympios, upon the very altar of God in the temple. They built idol altars throughout the cities of Judah on every side, and burnt incense at the doors of their houses and in the streets. To erase the memory of God's law, they rent in pieces the books of the law which they found, and burnt them with fire. And whosoever was found with any the book of the testament, or if any committed to the law, the king's commandment was that they should put him to death. Thus did they by their authority unto the Israelites every month, to as many as were found in the cities. The terror was absolute. On the 25th day of the month, they did sacrifice upon the idol altar, which was upon the altar of God. At which time, according to the commandment, they put to death certain women that had caused their children to be circumcised, and they hanged the infants about their necks, a horrific warning to all. They rifled their houses and slew them that had circumcised them. In the face of such horror, some chose a quiet, defiant death. Albeit many in Israel were fully resolved and confirmed in themselves not to eat any unclean thing. Wherefore they chose rather to die, that they might not be defiled with meats, and that they might not profane the holy covenant. So then they died. And there was very great wrath upon Israel. It seemed as if the light of Judah was about to be extinguished forever, a story ending in silence and ashes. But in the town of Modin, a spark was about to be struck. In those days arose Mattathias, the son of John, the son of Simeon, a priest of the sons of Joarib from Jerusalem, who now dwelt in Modin. He had 5 sons, Johanan, called Cadiz, Simon called Thassi, Judas, who was called Maccabeus, Eleazar called Avaran, and Jonathan, whose surname was Aphus. This man, a country priest, saw the blasphemies committed in Judah and Jerusalem, and uttered a cry of profound grief. "Woe is me," he said, "wherefore was I born to see this misery of my people and of the holy city, and to dwell there when it was delivered into the hand of the enemy, and the sanctuary into the hand of strangers." He lamented the desolation, the captivity, the slain infants and young men. What nation hath not had a part in her kingdom and gotten of her spoils? All her ornaments are taken away. Of a free woman she is become a bondslave. And behold, our sanctuary, even our beauty and our glory, is laid waste, and the Gentiles have profaned it. To what end therefore shall we live any longer? Then Mattathias and his sons rent their clothes, and put on sackcloth, and mourned very sore. The time for mourning, however, was about to end. The king's officers came to Modin to compel the people to sacrifice. When many of Israel came unto them, Mattathias also and his sons came together. The officer, knowing Mattathias' standing, appealed to him directly. "Thou art a ruler and an honorable and great man in this city, and strengthened with sons and brethren. Now therefore come thou first, and fulfill the king's commandment, like as all the heathen have done, yea, and the men of Judah also, and such as remain at Jerusalem. So shalt thou and thy house be in the number of the king's friends, and thou and thy children shall be honored with silver and gold and many rewards." It was a tempting offer, safety, wealth, and prestige in exchange for a simple symbolic act. But Mattathias answered with a loud voice, a declaration that would echo through history. "Though all the nations that are under the king's dominion obey him, and fall away every one from the religion of their fathers, and give consent to his commandments, yet will I and my sons and my brethren walk in the covenant of our fathers. God forbid that we should forsake the law and the ordinances. We will not hearken to the king's words to go from our religion either on the right hand or the left." The line was drawn. As he finished speaking, a scene of ultimate capitulation unfolded. A Jew came forward in the sight of all to sacrifice on the altar at Modin according to the king's commandment. This was the moment of truth, the test of Mattathias' words. Which thing when Mattathias saw, he was inflamed with zeal, and his reins trembled. Neither could he forbear to show his anger according to judgment, wherefore he ran and slew him upon the altar. Also the king's commissioner who compelled men to sacrifice, he killed at that time, and the altar he pulled down. It was a sudden, explosive act of defiance, mirroring the zeal of the ancient priest Phinehas. Thus dealt he zealously for the law of God. And Mattathias cried throughout the city with a loud voice, "Whosoever is zealous of the law, and maintaineth the covenant, let him follow me." So he and his sons fled into the mountains, and left all that ever they had in the city. The revolt had begun. Many that sought after justice and judgment went down into the wilderness to dwell there, both they and their children and their wives and their cattle, because afflictions increased sore upon them. They were the first Hasidim, the pious ones, who chose a life of hardship over compromise. But the king's forces pursued them. They overtook a group in the wilderness and prepared to attack them on the Sabbath day. The Syrians said unto them, Let that which ye have done hitherto suffice. Come forth, and do according to the commandment of the king, and ye shall live. But the Jews in the wilderness said, We will not come forth, neither will we do the king's commandment, to profane the Sabbath day. They held to a strict, traditional interpretation that forbade fighting on the Sabbath, so the enemy gave them the battle with all speed. Albeit they answered them not, neither cast they a stone at them, nor stopped the places where they lay hid, but said, Let us die all in our innocency. Heaven and earth will testify for us, that ye put us to death wrongfully. So they rose up against them in battle on the Sabbath, and they slew them with their wives and children and their cattle, to the number of 1,000 people. It was a massacre of the devout. When Mattathias and his friends understood hereof, they mourned for them right sore. And one of them said to another, If we all do as our brethren have done, and fight not for our lives and laws against the heathen, they will now quickly root us out of the earth. At that time therefore they decreed, saying, Whosoever shall come to make battle with us on the Sabbath day, we will fight against him. Neither will we die all as our brethren that were murdered in the secret places. This was a momentous decision, a reinterpretation of the law to allow for self-defense, ensuring the survival of the rebellion. Now, joined by the Hasidim and all who fled from persecution, Mattathias and his band became a guerrilla force. They went round about and pulled down the altars, and what children soever they found within the coast of Israel uncircumcised, those they circumcised valiantly. They pursued also after the proud men, and the work prospered in their hand. So they recovered the law out of the hand of the Gentiles, and out of the hand of kings, neither suffered they the sinner to triumph. They were taking back their land, one village, one child, one altar at a time. As Mattathias felt death approaching, he gathered his sons for a final charge, a speech that wove their family into the great tapestry of Israel's heroes. Now hath pride and rebuke gotten strength, and the time of destruction, and the wrath of indignation. Now therefore, my sons, be ye zealous for the law, and give your lives for the covenant of your fathers. He summoned the memories of Abraham, found faithful in temptation, Joseph, who kept the commandment in distress, Phinehas, zealous for the covenant, Joshua for fulfilling the word, Caleb for bearing witness, David for being merciful, Elijah zealous for the law, the 3 young men in the fiery furnace, and Daniel in the lion's den. Thus consider ye throughout all ages that none that put their trust in him shall be overcome. Fear not then the words of a sinful man, for his glory shall be dung and worms. Today he shall be lifted up, and tomorrow he shall not be found, because he is returned into his dust, and his thought is come to nothing. Then, with a leader's practical eye, he assessed his sons. Be ye valiant, and show yourselves men in the behalf of the law, for by it shall ye obtain glory. And behold, I know that your brother Simon is a man of counsel. Give ear unto him alway, he shall be a father unto you. As for Judas Maccabeus, he hath been mighty and strong even from his youth up. Let him be your captain, and fight the battle of the people. So he blessed them, and was gathered to his fathers, and all Israel made great lamentation for him. The mantle had passed. Then his son Judas, called Maccabeus, rose up in his stead. The meaning of Maccabeus is uncertain, perhaps the hammer, a name that would prove terrifyingly apt. All his brethren helped him, and so did all they that held with his father, and they fought with cheerfulness the battle of Israel. The text paints a vivid portrait of this new leader. So he got his people great honor, and put on a breastplate as a giant, and girded his warlike harness about him, and he made battles, protecting the host with his sword. In his acts he was like a lion, and like a lion's whelp roaring for his prey. For he pursued the wicked, and sought them out, and burnt up those that vexed his people. Wherefore the wicked shrunk for fear of him, and all the workers of iniquity were troubled, because salvation prospered in his hand. He grieved also many kings, and made Jacob glad with his acts, and his memorial is blessed forever. He was more than a guerrilla leader. He was the living embodiment of his people's resurgent hope. The first major test came when a local Syrian general, Apollonius, gathered the Gentiles together, and a great host out of Samaria to fight against Israel. Which thing when Judas perceived, he went forth to meet him, and so he smote him, and slew him. Many also fell down slain, but the rest fled. Wherefore Judas took their spoils, and Apollonius's sword also, wherewith he fought all his life long. This sword became a powerful symbol, the weapon of the enemy, now turned against him. But a greater threat was coming. A Syrian prince named Siron, hearing of Judas's growing power, sought to make a name for himself. "I will get me a name and honor in the kingdom," he said. "For I will go fight with Judas and them that are with him, who despise the king's commandment." So he made him ready to go up, and with him went a mighty host of the ungodly. When Judas's small company saw this vast army approaching, their courage faltered. How should we be able, being so few, to fight against so great a multitude and so strong, seeing we are ready to faint with fasting all this day? But Judas answered with unshakable faith, "It is no hard matter for many to be shut up in the hands of a few, and with the God of heaven it is all one to deliver with a great multitude or a small company. For the victory of battle standeth not in the multitude of a host, but strength cometh from heaven. They come against us in much pride and iniquity to destroy us, and our wives and our children, and to spoil us. But we fight for our lives and our laws. Wherefore the Lord himself will overthrow them before our face, and as for you, be ye not afraid of them." Now, as soon as he had left off speaking, he leapt suddenly upon them. And so Siron and his host were overthrown before him. They pursued them down from Beth-horon, slaying about 800 men. The fear of Judas and his brethren began to fall upon the nations round about them, and his fame came unto the king. King Antiochus, preoccupied with financial troubles in the east, decided to deal with the Jewish problem decisively, but from a distance. He left his trusted lieutenant, Lysias, to oversee the western half of his kingdom, with a chilling command concerning Judea, to send an army against them, to destroy and root out the strength of Israel and the remnant of Jerusalem, and to take away their memorial from that place, and to place strangers in all their quarters, and divide their land by lot. It was a plan for total ethnic cleansing. Lysias chose Ptolemy, Nicanor, and Gorgias, mighty men of the king's friends, and with them he sent 40,000 footmen and 7,000 horsemen to go into the land of Judah and to destroy it. This massive force pitched by Emmaus in the plain country. The merchants of the country, hearing of this, came with silver and gold and servants to buy the children of Israel for slaves, so confident were they of Assyrian victory. The situation was dire. Judas and his brethren saw that miseries were multiplied, and that the forces did encamp themselves in their borders. "Let us restore the decayed fortune of our people," they said, "and let us fight for our people and the sanctuary." The congregation gathered at Mizpah, the ancient place of prayer and assembly, a place associated with the prophet Samuel. Jerusalem lay void as a wilderness, a haunting image of desolation. There was none of her children that went in or out. The sanctuary also was trodden down, and aliens kept the stronghold. Joy was taken from Jacob, and the pipe and the harp ceased. The people fasted, put on sackcloth, cast ashes upon their heads, and rent their clothes. They laid open the book of the law and cried with a loud voice toward heaven, "What shall we do with these? And whither shall we carry them away? For thy sanctuary is trodden down and profaned, and thy priests are in heaviness and brought low. And lo, the heathen are assembled together against us to destroy us. What things they imagine against us thou knowest. How shall we be able to stand against them, except thou, O God, be our help?" Then sounded they with trumpets and cried with a loud voice. After this, Judas, like a new Joshua, organized his army, but with a merciful provision. As for such as were building houses, or had betrothed wives, or were planting vineyards, or were fearful, those he commanded to return every man to his own house, according to the law. He was left with a small, dedicated force. The Syrian general, Gorgias, took 5,000 footmen and 1,000 horsemen and moved by night to launch a surprise attack on Judas's camp. But Judas, learning of this, made a bold decision. He himself removed, and the valiant men with him, that he might smite the king's army which was at Emmaus, while as yet the forces were dispersed from the camp. It was a breathtaking gamble, to leave his base and attack the main enemy camp. When Gorgias found the Jewish camp empty, he assumed they had fled into the mountains. But as soon as it was day, Judas showed himself in the plain with 3,000 men, who nevertheless had neither armor nor swords to their minds. They saw the camp of the heathen, strong and well harnessed, compassed with expert horsemen. Judas exhorted them, "Fear ye not their multitude, neither be ye afraid of their assault. Remember how our fathers were delivered in the Red Sea, when Pharaoh pursued them with an army. Now therefore let us cry unto heaven, if peradventure the Lord will have mercy upon us, and remember the covenant of our fathers, and destroy this host before our face this day, that so all the heathen may know that there is one who delivereth and saveth Israel." The battle was joined. The strangers, seeing Judas's small force, came out to meet them, but Judas's men, with the element of surprise and desperate courage, discomfited them. The Syrians fled into the plain, and Judas pursued them fiercely, slaying about 3,000 men. He then turned and spoiled their camp, gaining much gold, silver, and silk, and most importantly, the weapons and armor his men so desperately needed. They returned home, singing a song of thanksgiving, praising the Lord in heaven, because it is good, because his mercy endureth forever. Thus Israel had a great deliverance that day. Lysias, humiliated, gathered an even larger army the next year, 60,000 footmen and 5,000 horsemen, and came into Idumea, pitching at Beth-zur. Judas met him with 10,000 men. Seeing the mighty army, he prayed, "Blessed art thou, O Saviour of Israel, who didst quell the violence of the mighty man by the hand of thy servant David, and gavest the host of strangers into the hands of Jonathan the son of Saul, and his armor-bearer. Shut up this army in the hand of thy people Israel, and let them be confounded in their power and horsemen. Make them to be of no courage, and cause the boldness of their strength to fall away, and let them quake at their destruction. Cast them down with the sword of them that love thee, and let all those that know thy name praise thee with thanksgiving." They joined battle, and there was slain of the host of Lysias about 5,000 men. Seeing his army put to flight and the incredible manliness of Judas's soldiers, Lysias retreated to Antioch to gather more forces. For the first time, Judea was free of the immediate Syrian threat. Then said Judas and his brethren, "Behold, our enemies are discomfited. Let us go up to cleanse and dedicate the sanctuary." Upon this, all the host assembled themselves together and went up into Mount Zion. What they saw was a heartbreaking spectacle. The sanctuary was desolate, the altar profaned, the gates burned up, and shrubs growing in the courts as in a forest or in one of the mountains. The priests' chambers were pulled down. They rent their clothes, made great lamentation, cast ashes upon their heads, fell down flat to the ground, and cried toward heaven. Judas appointed men to keep the Syrian garrison in the Acra occupied, while he set about the sacred work of purification. He chose blameless priests who cleansed the sanctuary and bore out the defiled stones into an unclean place. They consulted what to do with the profaned altar of burnt offerings and decided it was best to pull it down, lest it be a perpetual reproach. They laid up the stones in a convenient place until a prophet should come to show what to do with them, a poignant admission that they were acting without prophetic guidance in a new and uncertain time. Then they took whole stones according to the law and built a new altar. They made new holy vessels, brought in the candlestick, the altar of incense, and the table of showbread. They burned incense, lit the lamps, set out the loaves, and finished all the works. Now on the 25th day of the 9th month, which is called Chislev, in the 148th year, they rose up betimes in the morning and offered sacrifice according to the law upon the new altar of burnt offerings which they had made. Look at what time and what day the heathen had profaned it. Even in that same day was it dedicated with songs and cithens and harps and cymbals. All the people fell upon their faces, worshipping and praising the God of heaven, who had given them good success. They kept the dedication of the altar for 8 days with gladness, a celebration that would be remembered for generations as the Feast of Dedication, or Hanukkah. Moreover, Judas and his brethren ordained that these days should be kept every year with mirth and gladness. They also fortified Mount Zion and Beth Zur to defend their hard-won freedom. The temple was rededicated, but the war for the soul and soil of Judea was far from over. The nations round about were displeased that the Jews had restored their worship and independence. Wherefore they thought to destroy the generation of Jacob that was among them, and thereupon they began to slay and destroy the people. Judas became a whirlwind of military activity, campaigning on multiple fronts to protect Jewish communities. He fought against the children of Esau in Idumea. He punished the children of Bean for their ambushes, and he smote the Ammonites. But a greater crisis emerged. Letters arrived from Jewish communities in Gilead and Galilee, besieged and facing annihilation. The heathen that are round about us are assembled together against us to destroy us, they wrote. And they are preparing to come and take the fortress whereunto we are fled. Come now, therefore, and deliver us from their hands, for many of us are slain. Judas acted with brilliant strategy. He said to Simon his brother, Choose thee out men, and go and deliver thy brethren that are in Galilee, for I and Jonathan my brother will go into the country of Gilead. He left Joseph and Azarias in charge of Judea with a strict command. Take ye the charge of this people, and see that ye make not war against the heathen until the time that we come again. Simon went into Galilee, fought many battles, and successfully rescued the Jewish population there, bringing them back to Judea with great joy. Meanwhile, Judas and Jonathan crossed the Jordan on a 3-day journey into the wilderness. They met with the Nabathites, who told them of the plight of the Jews in Gilead, shut up in various strong cities. Judas moved with lightning speed, taking city after city, Bozrah, Bosor, Alema, and others, often slaying the male population and taking the spoils. He finally confronted the main Syrian force under Timotheus at a city near a brook. Timotheus planned to attack only if Judas was hesitant to cross, but Judas, perceiving the strategy, crossed the brook first with his entire army and routed the enemy, burning the temple of Carnum where they had fled. He then gathered all the Israelites in Gilead, a great host of men, women, and children, and began the long journey back to Judea. They were blocked at the city of Ephron, which refused them passage. Judas was forced to assault the city, took it with great slaughter, and passed through. They crossed the Jordan into the great plain before Bethshan and finally arrived at Mount Zion with joy and gladness, offering burnt offerings because not one of them was slain. It was a miraculous deliverance. However, back in Judea, the commanders left behind, Joseph and Azarias, grew envious of the glory of Judas and his brethren. They said, "Let us also get us a name, and go fight against the heathen that are round about us." Against Judas's explicit orders, they went toward Jamnia and were met by Gorgias. They were put to flight, and about 2,000 men of Israel were slain. Thus was there a great overthrow among the children of Israel, because they were not obedient unto Judas and his brethren. The text makes a pointed distinction. Moreover, these men came not of the seed of those by whose hand deliverance was given unto Israel. True leadership was a matter of divine calling and faithfulness, not mere ambition. Judas, meanwhile, continued his campaigns, smiting Hebron and the cities of the Philistines. The war was expanding, and the legend of the Maccabees was growing. Meanwhile, far to the east, King Antiochus Epiphanes met a fittingly miserable end. Traveling through Persia, he attempted to plunder a rich temple in the city of Elimas, but was driven away. Then came one who brought him tidings of the disasters in Judea, that his armies were put to flight, the abomination was pulled down, and the sanctuary was restored. When the king heard these words, he was astonished and sore moved. He laid him down upon his bed and fell sick for grief, because it had not befallen him as he looked for. His grief worsened, and he knew he was dying. He called his friends and uttered a remarkable confession. "The sleep is gone from mine eyes, and my heart faileth for very care. I thought with myself, into what tribulation am I come? And how great a flood of misery is it wherein now I am? For I was bountiful and beloved in my power, but now I remember the evils that I did at Jerusalem, and that I took all the vessels of gold and silver that were therein, and sent to destroy the inhabitants of Judea without a cause. I perceive therefore that for this cause these troubles are come upon me, and behold, I perish through great grief in a strange land." So the great persecutor died, consumed by his own guilt and failure. His successor, the young Antiochus Epiphanes, under the regent Lysias, resumed the war in Judea. The Syrians laid siege to Beth Zur and then Jerusalem itself. The situation became desperate for the Jews in the city, as it was a sabbatical year when fields were left fallow and food stores were low. But politics once again saved them. Lysias heard that a rival, Philip, was challenging his rule in Antioch. Needing to return quickly, he offered the Jews peace. "Now therefore let us be friends with these men," he told the king, "and make peace with them, and with all their nation, and covenant with them that they shall live after their laws as they did before. For they are therefore displeased and have done all these things, because we abolished their laws." The king and princes agreed. They made peace, and the Jews, starving and besieged, accepted. The king entered Mount Zion, but when he saw its strength, he broke his oath and commanded the wall to be pulled down before he departed. The respite was temporary, but it was a respite nonetheless. The political landscape shifted again with the arrival of a new claimant to the Seleucid throne, Demetrius I, the son of Seleucus IV. He found a willing ally in a wicked man named Alcimus, who desired the high priesthood and accused Judas and his brethren to the new king. Demetrius sent a general, Maccabees, with Alcimus to take vengeance on the children of Israel. They came with a great power and spoke peaceable words deceitfully. Some of the Hasidim, the pious ones, were the first to seek peace, trusting Alcimus because he was a priest. But Alcimus took 60 of them and slew them in one day, breaking his oath. Fear fell upon the people, who said, "There is neither truth nor righteousness in them, for they have broken the covenant and oath that they made." Judas, seeing the mischief Alcimus had done, took vengeance on those who had revolted. Alcimus fled to the king, who then sent a new general, Nicanor, with a deadly hate for Israel. Nicanor also attempted deceit, but Judas, wary, avoided his traps. Nicanor, enraged, threatened the temple, vowing to burn it if Judas was not delivered to him. The priests, standing before the altar, wept and prayed. Thou, O Lord, didst choose this house to be called by thy name, and to be a house of prayer and petition for thy people. Be avenged of this man and his host, and let them fall by the sword. Remember their blasphemies, and suffer them not to continue any longer. The two armies met at Adasa. Judas prayed, recalling how God had destroyed the army of Sennacherib. Even so destroy thou this host before us this day, that the rest may know that he hath spoken blasphemously against thy sanctuary, and judge thou him according to his wickedness. On the 13th day of the month, Adar, the battle was joined. Nicanor's host was discomfited, and he himself was the first slain. The Jews cut off his head and his right hand, which he had stretched out so proudly, and hanged them near Jerusalem. The people rejoiced greatly, and ordained to keep that day, the day of Nicanor, as a day of gladness every year. The land of Judah had rest for a little while. Judas, understanding the precariousness of their situation, looked beyond their immediate borders for a lasting alliance. He had heard of the Romans, that they were mighty and valiant men, and such as would lovingly accept all that joined themselves unto them. He heard of their great conquests in Spain and Greece, their defeat of the great Antiochus III, and their unique form of government through a senate. It was a bold move for a small, rebellious nation to seek the friendship of the rising superpower of the West. Judas sent ambassadors to Rome, who spoke before the Senate, saying, Judas Maccabeus with his brethren and the people of the Jews have sent us unto you to make a confederacy and peace with you, and that we might be registered your confederates and friends. The Romans agreed. They wrote back on tables of brass a formal treaty of mutual defense. Good success be to the Romans and to the people of the Jews by sea and by land forever. The sword also and enemy be far from them. If there come first any war upon the Romans or any of their confederates throughout all their dominion, the people of the Jews shall help them as the time shall be appointed with all their heart. In the same manner also, if war come first upon the nation of the Jews, the Romans shall help them with all their heart. It was a diplomatic triumph, a recognition of the Jewish state on the international stage. But it would come too late for Judas himself. King Demetrius, angered by the treaty and the continuing resistance, sent Maccabees and Alcimus back into Judea with the chief strength of his host. They encamped before Jerusalem with 20,000 footmen and 2,000 horsemen. Judas, at Eleasa, had only 3,000 men, and even of those many were afraid and slipped away, until only 800 remained. Judas was sore troubled, but he refused to flee. God forbid that I should do this thing and flee away from them. If our time be come, let us die manfully for our brethren, and let us not stain our honor. The battle was fierce. Judas's men initially had success, but Maccabees' main force pressed them hard. The fighting continued from morning till night. Judas Maccabeus, the hammer of God's people, was killed. Jonathan and Simon took his body and buried him in the sepulchre of his fathers at Modin. All Israel made great lamentation for him and mourned many days, saying, How is the valiant man fallen that delivered Israel? The light seemed to have gone out. After the death of Judas, the wicked put forth their heads again, and a great famine struck the land. The friends of Judas came to Jonathan and said, Since thy brother Judas died, we have no man like him to go forth against our enemies. Now therefore we have chosen thee this day to be our prince and captain in his stead. The leadership passed to another son of Mattathias. Jonathan proved to be as shrewd as he was brave. He and Simon fled into the wilderness of Tekoa, pursued by Maccabees. In a dramatic battle near the Jordan, Jonathan, though outnumbered, urged his men, Let us go up now, and fight for our lives, for it standeth not with us today as in times past. The battle is before us and behind us, and the water of Jordan on this side and that side, the marsh likewise and wood, neither is there place for us to turn aside. Wherefore cry ye now unto heaven, that ye may be delivered from the hand of your enemies. They fought, and Jonathan leapt into the Jordan and swam to safety. Maccabees, frustrated, fortified several cities and took hostages, but the rebellion continued. The high priest Alcimus, the source of so much trouble, was struck down by God. His mouth stopped with a palsy, and he died in great torment. After 2 years of conflict, Jonathan sent ambassadors to Maccabees to treat for peace. Maccabees, weary of the fruitless war, agreed, swore never to harm Jonathan, and returned to his own land. Thus the sword ceased from Israel. Jonathan dwelt at Michmash and began to govern the people, destroying the ungodly men out of Israel. The struggle had evolved from a fight for survival to a battle for political consolidation. The complex politics of the Seleucid Empire now worked in Jonathan's favor. A rival king, Alexander Ballas, claiming to be the son of Antiochus Epiphanes, rose against Demetrius. Both kings desperately sought Jonathan's support. Demetrius wrote to Jonathan with loving words, granting him authority to raise an army. But Alexander's offer was even more spectacular. He wrote to Jonathan, "We have heard of thee, that thou art a man of great power, and meet to be our friend. Wherefore now this day we ordain thee to be the high priest of thy nation, and to be called the king's friend." He sent him a purple robe and a crown of gold. In the 7th month of the 160th year, at the Feast of Tabernacles, Jonathan put on the holy robe. A son of Mattathias, a leader of the rebellion, was now the officially recognized high priest of Israel. It was a moment of immense symbolic power, even as purists might have questioned his Zadokite lineage. Jonathan chose Alexander, who proved victorious. He was honored at a great marriage feast, where he was clothed in purple and seated by the king. Simon, his brother, was made captain. Jonathan's power grew. He fought successful campaigns against Apollonius, a general of Demetrius, defeating him near Joppa and Azotus, and even burning the temple of Dagon. King Alexander honored him yet more, giving him the city of Ekron and its borders. The Maccabees were now princes of a growing state. The story of dynastic intrigue continued. Ptolemy VI of Egypt initially supported Alexander, but then switched sides, marrying his daughter to Demetrius II, the son of Demetrius I. Alexander was killed in battle, and for a time Demetrius II was king. Jonathan successfully besieged the Acra, the hated Syrian fortress in Jerusalem, and when Demetrius demanded he stop, Jonathan went to the king in Ptolemais and won even greater concessions, including making Judea free from tribute. But Demetrius reneged, and a new player entered the scene, Tryphon, a general supporting Alexander Ballas's young son, Antiochus Epiphanes. Jonathan and Simon supported the young king, who confirmed Jonathan as high priest and made Simon his general. Jonathan's power became immense. He renewed the treaty with Rome and Sparta. He campaigned successfully in Galilee and against the forces of Demetrius. But Tryphon, plotting to seize the throne for himself, saw Jonathan as an obstacle. Through deceit, he captured Jonathan at Ptolemais, killing his men and taking him prisoner. It seemed the Maccabee cause was facing its darkest hour since the death of Judas. But the spirit of Mattathias lived on. Now when Simon heard that Tryphon had gathered a great host to invade Judea, and saw the people in great fear, he went up to Jerusalem and gathered them. "Ye yourselves know what great things I and my brethren and my father's house have done for the laws and the sanctuary," he declared. "All my brethren are slain for Israel's sake, and I am left alone. Now therefore be it far from me that I should spare my own life in any time of trouble. I will avenge my nation, and the sanctuary, and our wives and our children." The people's spirit revived, and they cried, "Thou shalt be our leader, instead of Judas and Jonathan thy brother. Fight thou our battles, and whatsoever thou commandest us, that will we do." Simon, the last of the 5 brothers, took command. He fortified the cities and prepared for war. Tryphon, holding Jonathan, attempted to extort money and hostages from Simon, who, knowing it was deceit, paid it to avoid the people's hatred. Tryphon then invaded, but was hindered by a great snow, and he ultimately murdered the young king Antiochus and seized the throne for himself. Then, in an act of treachery, he slew Jonathan. Simon sent for the bones of his brother and buried him in Modin, the family tomb. All Israel made great lamentation. Simon built a magnificent monument for his father and brothers, with 7 pyramids and great pillars, a perpetual memory of the Maccabee family. It standeth, the text says, yet unto this day. Simon, now the sole leader, proved to be a great statesman. He captured Gaza, cleansing it of idols, and finally, after a long siege, secured the surrender of the Acra, the Syrian citadel in Jerusalem. The people entered the fortress with praise and palm branches on the 23rd day of the 2nd month in the 171st year, because a great enemy was destroyed out of Israel. They ordained to keep that day every year with gladness. The yoke of the heathen was taken away from Israel. The people began to date their contracts in the 1st year of Simon the high priest, the governor and leader of the Jews. The land had rest all the days of Simon. He sought the good of his nation, and his authority and honor pleased them well. He enlarged the borders, gathered captives, and ruled over Gaza and the Acra. They tilled their ground in peace, the earth gave her increase, and every man sat under his vine and his fig tree, and there was none to fray them. He strengthened the lowly, searched out the law, and took away the wicked. He beautified the sanctuary and multiplied its vessels. The Romans and Spartans renewed their alliance with him. In a great assembly, the people recorded their gratitude on tables of brass, which they set upon pillars on Mount Zion. They declared that Simon should be their leader and high priest forever, until a faithful prophet should arise, and that he should be obeyed by all, clothed in purple and gold. The Hasmonean dynasty, born in the fires of persecution and forged in the battles of faithful men, had established itself. It was a story of unimaginable courage, of a family who, for the sake of their God and their law, turned the world upside down, and in doing so, preserved a light for the ages.